Thanks very much, Sarah. I was enjoying your non-human metaphors as a new materialist practicing, hoping to be. I thought they were great, funky and... okay, so our next speaker is Marco Marcon. And Dr. Marco Marcon was born in Italy, migrated to Australia in 1985. He's been awarded degrees by the University of Rome, Murdoch University, and a PhD by the University of New South Wales. It's quite a long CV, so an introduction, so I think I'll just... Now, Marco's been involved in a lot of things, broadcasting on radio in Italy, edited Praxis M, and he's a co-founder of the International Art Space, formerly known as IASKA, an organisation which he's been managing since 1998. In 2009, he created Spaced, an international event of socially engaged art involving the participation of regional and rural communities throughout Western Australia. I think I'll leave it there. Over to you, Marco.
Thank you. It's great to be a last speaker because just a time when people's brain thoughts of art are being pushed off by thoughts of beer. But I don't have any pictures to show you. And I'm just going to talk very briefly about some ideas. I'm not sure to what extent you are familiar with the International Art Space. If you're not, the easiest way to familiarize yourself is just to walk across the road and go to the West Australian Museum and look at the exhibition Space to Future Recall. There is one fundamental difference I just realized between what we do and most of the other projects that have been discussed, and very interesting project today. And fundamentally, and that is the idea, the point of difference is fundamentally we really wanted to take artists out of the environment, the inner city, the inner city milieu, within which most artist-run spaces, galleries, biennial, and so forth are based. And so the idea was to place very contemporary artists, internet from all over the world, in an ordinary rural community. This project came about simply because at that stage I was teaching at the Curtin University in the theory department, and artist Rodney Glick had two friends living in the wheat belt, Donna Dransfield, an ex-graduate from the Curtin School of Art, and her husband, Tony York, who had they own a very large farm in Tamin. If you don't know, Tamin and Calabaran are very close, and they're about 200 kilometers from Perth. What we liked about the idea of having a project in Calabaran is the fact that the place is extraordinarily uninteresting. And we really didn't want to do anything in a place which was at a touristic angle or at a historical angle, but we really wanted to do something where in the kind of a community that was representative of hundreds of other similar rural communities in Australia. So we really liked the fact that Calabaran is a place like many other places and is as interesting as uninteresting as any other places. The key concept that moved us, that compelled us to work in this way, was that there is a gap, which we are all familiar with, between contemporary artists and ordinary audiences. And the question is what can be done to, if you like, improve the situation, to bring ordinary audiences closer to contemporary art without, however, compromising contemporary art. By compromising contemporary art, there are two main ways to compromise contemporary art. One was actually mentioned by Helen, which is to spectacularize art, so to turn contemporary art into a spectacle. And that is something, it's a strategy which is implemented by people that have enough money to do that, usually art festival or big galleries. The other way is to compromise contemporary art in an effort to attract or to engage non-specialist audiences is to dumb it down, to sort of make it less difficult, more approachable, to try to make it a little bit coquettish and you know, to present work which is big red work that you would not present in a different context. So you do one work for the Venice Biennale and another work for a community-based project. So we wanted to avoid both those pitfalls. Actually, I forgot to start one thing. Do we have a solution for how to do that? No. Our project is still an ongoing element of experimentation and trial and error and constantly rethinking how we do things. There has been mainly two stages in our organization. The first one was when we ran a residential space and a gallery in Calabarin, and that was between 1998 and 2010. And that was a more or less conventional or straightforward envelope, architectural envelope, including a gallery, two apartment and studio spaces, and then an office. What was not conventional was the location, so it was very unusual to bump into a gallery of contemporary art in a place like Calabarin. For example, just to give you an idea, we once had shown work by the Carrie Stoll collection, work that's never been seen in Perth, including Gilbert and George, Solowit, and many other well-known contemporary artists and masters of the post-World War II art. So that was unusual, but what we tried to do was kind of different. So our kind of, okay, that was stage one in Calabarin. Let me go back. Stage two is what it is now, which is called Spaced. Fundamentally, Spaced program is based on the same curatorial philosophy as the original IASKA. IASKA meant International Space Calabarin Australia. But the only difference, fundamentally, is that instead of having a sequence of artists in the same place, we have artists more or less simultaneously in several different places. So basically, what we did, we kind of franchised IASKA. Each spaced event, to run each spaced event, we need to create a network of partnership between our central office in Perth. I don't move from Perth very often. I'm a recluse, which is paradoxical. But so we have a network, but we run this project in collaboration with our community arts organization, regional galleries, shires in different communities, sometimes are the same communities. So we fundamentally had to rely on this support in order, of this kind of, if you like, participatory management structure in order to kind of run the event. It wouldn't absolutely be impossible to run an event like Space 2, which placed artists from as far north as Derby and as far south as Esperance and as far inland as the Western Desert. Okay, so, and not to mention exchange with India. So we need to rely on our local partners to manage the project. So this is a point of, I think, distinctiveness, this kind of network management structure. The other thing is that how do we, what is the curatorial brief to the artist? How do we, if you like, how do we advise the artists or direct them in order to deal with this fundamental task, how to break down the gulf between ordinary audiences and contemporary art without compromising the integrity and the topicality of the artwork. Our brief to them is fundamentally is to rely on interpersonal relationships. Our experience in Calabarin was that if artists spend enough time in a small community, and assuming that obviously has to be the right personality, and if they're introduced to the local community by a trusted local representative, member of the community, and that is also another important choice that needs to be made, to have the right partners in place, then the kind of interpersonal rapport that is established over time between artists and local residents creates a bridge that encourages people that have never been in an art gallery before to consider in a more sympathetic way what the artist proposes. That's one first technique. The second technique that we suggest to artists is actually part of our curatorial brief, is that the project that the artists create has to reflect aspects of the local context, has to respond to local history, local landscapes, and local social realities. And so that is also helps bridge the gulf, simply because the local community, although they might not feel too sympathetic towards conceptual art, at least they see themselves reflected in the final work through the eyes of this visiting artist. The third element, which I anticipated, is a durational element. There is no shortcut, or you cannot really accelerate these projects. They take time. And because we actually, there is also a managerial issue here, an economic issue. We pay artists a full-time wage to work for us, to participate in this. We not only pay them a full-time wage, we also pay them production cost and travel. In fact, our package to an individual artist is more than the top you can get for the DCA for an artist residence initiative. It's about $25,000 to $30,000 per artist. So we only ask artists to spend time in the community that we pay them for. So there's no obligation to stay more, which is about 10 weeks. Some artists choose to stay longer, up to 6 months, but that is, we cannot force them to do that if we don't pay them. So a strategy to extend the durational aspect of the project is to split the residency into two parts. The third part is the research and development and meet the locals. Then the artist goes away, possibly very often stays in touch with the contact he or she made in the community by email. And during that time, there is time for the artist to reprocess, to let the experience grow. So the work is not an immediate response to the experience, but there is time for that to kind of ferment and develop and grow. So by the time the artist comes back, he or she would have a clear idea what the project is going to be, have organized the logistics and the materials and the technique they want to employ, and so you have a better opportunity to create a work which has a kind of durational aspect. One thing that I want to mention, I don't know how much time I got left, is that another element, a key idea of our program is that there is no such a thing as a finished work or a work that you can access in the whole totality. I'll explain very simply. Fundamentally, there are 3 stages in our program. There is the residency stage and the presentation to the local community, a group show like the one at the museum that comes every 2 years at the end of each cycle of residencies, and a touring exhibition that is organized, national touring exhibition that is organized subsequent to the museum tour. So Sometimes the work is the same, sometimes there are 3 different versions of the same work. And what I really like the idea is that at each stage, each audience, if you like, can only access one aspect of this work. The work itself, the project itself, spans, time and space, and the entirety of the project can only be accessible to a certain extent at the level of documentation. Because let's not forget that in addition to the finished work, it is also, there are a lot of things that happen to an artist and in community which are not immediately translated into the finished work. There are a lot of interaction that happens at the level of collaboration between individual experiences, friendships, love, life, fights. We had 1 divorce, 1 marriage out of our program, maybe more than 1 divorce. That's one that we know of because of our program. So there are friendships that have been created, there have been projects that have continued after we finish, and that is something we really pride ourselves, and we are really happy when we establish a relationship, we fund it, and that relationship continues after we leave town. So on is an example that the project that they did in Roburn, and there are other examples. One thing that I want to say, I don't know how much time, I've actually got 1 minute? Yeah, okay, fantastic. So I just want to say, I want to finish with a provocation just to wake you up and prepare you, is that as far as international artist run spaces or initiative, my suggestion to you, or my challenge is encompassed in this sentence: get to know your neighbors. Do you know your neighbors? Do you know who lives, works, loves, hates around where your space is based? I'm not talking about the artists, I'm not talking the general community. I think it would be important for artist run spaces to overcome what Helen talked about, insiderism. I think Helen was thinking about insiderism within the art world, but I'm thinking about a broader kind of insiderism, that even if you're open to other group of artists, you should also implement strategies to involve, to a certain extent, and there are some, and there are people that do it internationally, to involve the general community, to involve your neighbors. So just open up, get to know your neighbors. That is my provocation.